Before I was a Christian, I used to be rather irritated by Christians who tried to tell me about their faith. They tried to kind of convert me. And I felt, I was an atheist, but I didn't go around trying to make other people atheists. And it seemed to me rather interfering. And I couldn't see why they did it. Sometimes people say to me, surely the best kind of Christian is the kind of person who is a Christian, but doesn't talk about their faith. Surely it's a kind of private matter. And sometimes they refer to some relation of theirs, sort of Uncle Norman, who is this wonderful Christian, but never talks about his faith. And the question I always want to ask is, well, how did Uncle Norman hear about it? Someone must have told him. And if the early Christians had not told people about their faith, none of us would know. So why should we tell people? First of all, because Jesus told us to. Jesus died for us. He rose again from the dead. And then he said, now, go and tell people about this amazing news that you can be forgiven, you can be set free, you can have eternal life. And really had no other plans except to use us to tell other people. The word go appears 1,514 times in the Bible. I didn't count that, but somebody did. In the New Testament, it's 233 times. In Matthew's Gospel, 54 times. Jesus says, go and tell. Go and invite. Go and make disciples. Second reason is because of our love for others. As we look around and we see people who are struggling to find meaning, purpose in their lives, struggling with guilt, struggling with fear of death, and so on. It's rather like, I guess, if you're in a desert and you came across water, it would be selfish to say, oh, it's wonderful to find water, but not want to tell other people about it. And I think a recognition of the fact that there's a kind of spiritual hunger out there sometimes comes from surprising sources. The singer Sinead O'Connor said this: as a race, we feel empty because our spirituality has been wiped out, and we don't know how to express ourselves. And as a result, we're encouraged to fill that gap with alcohol, drugs, sex, or money. People out there, she adds grimly, are screaming for the truth. Third reason to tell people is because good news travels fast. We can't keep it to ourselves. We don't want to. And when we're excited about a relationship with Jesus, it's the most natural thing in the world to want to tell people. So, how do we go about it? In my experience, certainly in my own life, there have been two sort of equal and opposite dangers. I think I've swung in my life between insensitivity and fear. When I first became a Christian, it was definitely insensitivity that predominated. I just wanted to tell everybody. I remember I'd been a Christian for about 10 days, and I went to a party, and I was determined to tell the first person I saw at this party about Jesus. And the first person I saw at this party happened to be an old friend of mine, who is now my wife, Pippa. She wasn't then my wife or even my girlfriend. She was just an old friend, and I knew she was not a Christian. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and tell her about Jesus. Well, in the time that I had been a Christian, in the 10 days that I'd been a Christian, I'd been to this talk on telling others. And in this talk, they said, if you want to lead someone to Christ, the first thing you must do is establish the fact that the person needs Jesus. So I thought, right, establish the fact she needs Jesus. So I went up to her on the dance floor. I didn't want to waste any time with polite conversation. I said, hello, Pippa, you look awful. You really need Jesus. Well, as you can imagine, this put her off for a very long time. And when she did finally become a Christian, it was through somebody totally different. The next party I went to, I decided I'd go better equipped. This was I think it was a 21st birthday party. It was a dinner jacket affair, and I decided I'd take some literature. So I put in my top pocket a little booklet called Becoming a Christian by John Stott. And I also thought, people might raise questions, because if you have a conversation, people might say, well, is there any evidence for the resurrection? So I took Evidence for the Resurrection by Norman Anderson. And sometimes people, they want to know about suffering, and John Young's book I recommended earlier, that's very good on the question of suffering. And then other people respond better to a kind of a story rather than a theological book. So I took Corrie ten Boom's book, A Hiding Place. I took Run, Baby, Run. I took The Cross and the Switchblade. And of course, the most powerful way to speak to people is to use the Bible. So I took a Bible. And then, of course, if somebody does become a Christian, you would want to give them a New Testament. So I took one of those, and maybe some Bible reading notes and some follow-up material. And so I stuffed all my pockets of my dinner jacket. Luckily, dinner jackets have lots of pockets. So I filled this dinner jacket with all these books. And finally, I managed to persuade some poor girl to dance with me. And I got out on the dance floor, and I was like this. I was sort of... I said, I'm so sorry, I'm a bit tired. Do you mind if we go and sit down? So we went and sat down, and I quickly brought the subject round to Christianity. And she started asking questions. I said, you know, it's amazing you asked that question. I just happen to have a booklet here about the resurrection. Oh, suffering. Yeah, I got one about that. And this pile of books went up like this. And she staggered off with these books. The amazing thing was, she came back a week later, and she said she was on a boat she went on holiday, and she was on the boat over to France, and she turned to her neighbour, and she said, I've just become a Christian. And she died in a riding accident at the age of 21. And I've often thought it's amazing that God used even my insensitivity to help her at that moment in her life. But that is not the way to go about it. So I swung from insensitivity to fear. And much of my life, it's been like that. And then I've heard a talk, go and make disciples. And I've gone back to insensitivity. And then I get hurt and I go back to fear. And all the way along, I've been thinking, what's the right way to do this? And I think, in essence, it boils down to one word. And that is love. That's why we tell people. And that's how we tell people. I find it helpful to think of this subject under really 5 headings, all beginning with the letter P, to make it slightly easier to remember. And the first one is presence. Would you like to turn to Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16? Jesus said this, verse 13, you are the salt of the earth. Verse 14, you are the light of the world. Verse 16, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Jesus says to this group of people, he says, look, just as he would say to us tonight, he says, look, you can make a difference to the whole world. You are the salt of the earth. You're the light of the whole world. What he's saying is we can have a wide-ranging influence. So we need to be in the world, but we need to be different. Jesus says you're salt. Now, salt in the ancient world was used instead of refrigeration to stop things going bad. And he says you're the people who need to stop the society around you going bad. And you're light. You're the ones to allow the light of Christ to shine through you. And it's summarized in, I suppose, love your neighbor as yourself. It's living out the Christian life, particularly with those in close proximity to us, our family, our work colleagues, people maybe we share a flat with. It's really enough that they know that we're Christians. We can't constantly be sort of forcing it down their throats. But if they know that we are Christians, they watch our lives. And we're called to be different, to show it through our love for our enemies, our little acts of kindness, honesty, integrity. This is hard. You know, it's really hard to live the kind of life that Jesus calls us to live. But this is what we're called to. We're called to a different love. That's what we're striving for.